The White House saying they're recommitting to Israel with President Biden's first phone call to Prime Minister Netanyahu nearly a month after taking office. We're also learning his administration reportedly warned Israel that they're ready to restart nuclear talks with Iran. So what does this tell us about our relationship with our most important ally? Here to discuss, Fox News senior strategic analyst and retired four-star general Jack Keane. General, thanks for being here this morning. There was a lot of people were speculating, why hasn't the White House, why hasn't Joe Biden spoken to Bibi Netanyahu? Now they have, although apparently in that call, Iran was not, the fact that we were re-engaging with Iran was not necessarily discussed. What do you make of the current state of our relationship with Israel, with this White House?
Yeah, well, certainly, I do think it was a bit of a snub. I think it was deliberate. We can only speculate to that effect. But my judgment tells me that this administration did not want to knee-jerk themselves into the over-the-top support of Israel and also to Prime Minister Netanyahu that the Trump administration had. And recall, Pete, that the Obama-Biden administration had the most strained relationship with Israel for 8 years that any president has ever had since the state was given birth to in 1948. So, and I think that where Biden is on this, I don't believe he's going to go back to that strained relationship of Obama, but he's certainly not going to be as supportive as President Trump was in moving the capital, recognizing the Golan Heights. Now, what does that mean for the nuclear deal? Well, certainly, I'm convinced that Netanyahu, if he hasn't had a conversation yet with the Biden administration, he certainly will have on how strongly he feels about how much the table has changed, Pete, from now to when they were negotiating the deal in 2014 and 2015. There are crippling sanctions on the Iranians that have got them back on their heels. They would have negotiated with the second Trump administration to remove those sanctions, and they would have had to make some significant concessions, or Trump would not have approved the deal. Second, they've got the wind at their backs. I'm talking about the Biden administration, because the normalization of relationships with Israel and the building of a broad coalition, something that would not have happened if Trump had not issued the sanctions and pulled out of the deal. That convinced the Arabs and the Israelis that the administration had their backs. So they have a strong hand to play. Will they play it is really the issue in front of us.
General, you used the phrase sort of over-the-top or knee-jerk support for Israel. Couldn't it also be characterized as necessary to undo what had been undone or undo what had been done under the Obama administration and create the kind of effects that it had in the region to marginalize Iran, and which has now boxed the Biden administration in probably more than they want to be?
No, I was just using Biden's interpretation of President Trump's Middle East policy to stand up against the Iranians, to strengthen the Arabs and Israeli hands, to build a coalition that we have never seen, which is a sea change and a paradigm shift. It is good news that the Biden administration, at least now, appears to want to support this coalition, the so-called Abraham Accords. We will see if the actions match the rhetoric. My concern with this administration, Pete, they folded on with the Iranians 6 years ago. The same team is back. Will they have the tough mindedness to negotiate a much better deal with these Iranians, who are very tough negotiators? It remains to be seen whether they're going to have the stiffness in their spine to deal with this issue.
Well, you've been a voice of clarity on this from the very beginning. And if it's not balance of cash, at the very least, Iranians want the sanctions lifted, and they know they've got an eager partner on the other side, and that's what they're going for. General Jack Keane, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Yeah, great talking to you, Pete. Have a great weekend.
You too.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.